Thursday. You already know we at work. Decided to hop on, chop it up with individuals. See what's the talk of the town. It's going down. The word in the curve. You heard me. It was raining earlier today, right? But seems to have now went away. So we are, having that storm type weather. They say it's supposed to rain all week. So está cabrón. But we needed the water. So especially, it was starting to be, kind of hot again. So get a little break from that. Now, for those who are curious, I did a new video on this channel. If you guys want to, scope that out regarding the new emails that have been leaked regarding Trump and Epstein. Dun, dun, dun. It's going to be hard for him to explain this one. It's a witch hunt. It's fake. It's going to be hard for him to use that one considering these emails are old. Like, why would these be fake if these were before you even president, before you were even running for president? Like, why would they be making up some shit like this, plotting against you if this was before you even thought about running for president? Like, why would they be doing a smear campaign if this was a while back ago? Didn't you? Setting stage, hard workers, but... Oh, serio? All right, that's right. That was a lot of work, but it paid good. Hey, that's right. That's good stuff, bro. That's good. Gotta make the cheddar some way. So I feel you. Oh, what's cracking like it, Derek? You getting yourself into my boy? That's right. Getting ready to make the Skrilla. Illa. And a lot of people too, because apparently the government's opened back up because Trump needed a distraction. Trump was like, I know how to get people to like me because of these emails coming out now. I'll reopen the government. Right on time. You gotta put God before your home. Yeah. I don't know about that one, right? I mean, people could say that, right? But then it seems that other stuff comes before, oneself, right? Like, for example, there's natural disasters and incidents where a lot of people lose their lives, right? But, there's a reason for that. But so it seems that we're never put first, all right? But then we have to put them first. Seems like one party's getting the short end of the stick, huh? What's cracking like in Dashpool? It makes sense. Human being. No, yeah, if you believe in that concept, if you believe in the creator. But like I said, everything seems to go up against that, though. I hope you get more views. Nah, well, it's cool. I'm happy with the views I do get. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm nobody here, and just the fact that people, tap in to hear me out, it's cool. I'm just here to interact. I'm not here to become like, how can I say, famous or big or important. I'm just here to, interact with people. That's it. I do appreciate those who support and subscribe and everything. But like I said, I'm just mind blown with the people that do tap in in general. Thoughts on an ex-gang member who decides to become Christian after coming home from prison? That's good. If he looks to improve himself, better his life, ain't nothing wrong with that. Can't nobody hate on an individual, for that. You know what I mean? See, it's different. Like if they were to use it as an excuse to, of why them not to participate in the reindeer games, but then want to peddle the same, destructive rhetoric. It's like, why is it that, you want to be pushing all this negativity, but then when it comes down to it, you don't want to participate because all of a sudden you found God in your life, Is a son of an old... Hey, I appreciate that. Well, I wouldn't say I'm the kindest person. um, how can I say it? I've had my share of, bull jive, right? We can only learn from mistakes, though. But you have people like Tubbs, Gunner, Mr. Criminal who claim to be Christians, yet promote. No, but see, that's the thing, though. Like, are they really Christians, though, or are they just saying that because they think that they'll score, humble points with the audience, though, Because anybody could say that they hold, religious values to them and that they're humble people. But if what you see them doing is nothing but negativity and promoting negativity and showing that they're individuals with bad behaviors, then clearly they're full of shit. Then I appreciate the kind words. Um, what's your thoughts on American Show? He's there. He's doing his thing. You know what I mean? Now I know those individuals have critiqued him, right? But he's the only one that has actually, gave back to the community. I know this to be a fact because, it happens to be in my area, right? And literally, when I mean my area, I mean literally the area, right? He has actually done a lot, you know, which, we can't say about these individuals that say that they're here for the raza. And regardless of whatever his motives were, I mean, he still did it though. He didn't have to. Or what do people say? Your life is miserable because you don't believe in God or have Him in your life. Yeah, I don't know. That's strange. Like how could they judge? Like they're judging without, they're judging me when they're not supposed to. It's strange. This three-strike law is crazy. I don't believe so. I think the three-strike laws is a good law, because there's some individuals out there that just don't learn, and you give them. I think 3 opportunities is more than enough, times to give somebody, Now, it's not so much the problem of the 3 strikes. It's what gives you a strike is the problem. Like what crimes actually, can we say are the ones that are worthy to give somebody a strike for? I think that's the crazy part. Not so much the law in itself, right? But what people are getting strikes for. Because there's some individuals out there that, sadly, they're not going to change and they don't look to better themselves and are looking to really hurt society, though. Like that is their number one goal and objective. Like you've done a violent crime once, twice, and now you're getting caught a third time for another violent crime. Is kind of like okay, clearly you're not learning and you don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on the YouTuber 16 to Life? I actually like Chill's channel and his rapping. Chill is a phenomenal rapper. Very underrated. Did you know one person to get 25 to life under the 3 strike? Or some a pizza man. Yeah, see, like stuff like that. Like what I say, what the strikes are given for. That I think that's the part that's like, you know what I mean? Like, what the hell kind of shit is that? You know what I mean? But then it would be different. Like, let's say if the individual has done an armed robbery 3 times in a row, like 3 times he's been busted for armed robbery 3 times, then clearly this individual's not going to change and he's not going to learn. Because in an armed robbery, anything can go wrong. When you produce a gun, you see people, accidentally shoot people or people have died for playing with weapons, right? So when you're doing an armed robbery, and the potential chance of any of those individuals losing their life could have happened. It was a possibility. Even if the individual never, used the gun, it was still a possibility. So, you know, the fact that he doesn't care putting people in those types of situations, then clearly this individual is, not it's not good to have him, roaming around society. Maybe if it would have been his first time or some shit like that, right? But like if this was his third offense for the same crime, it's kind of like, well, why aren't people? Well, once they become reborn Christians, isn't it sinful for to let say a Christian home target a fellow? Once he finds God. No, but like let's say for example, the individual is in there and he's doing all these shenanigans, right? And now the seat starts to get hot, and then in order for him to avoid the repercussions, right, he's gonna say that he has now found God in his life. But then let's say he gets out of jail and all of a sudden he starts to still promote the same type of street lifestyle. Then it's like, because for example, Chino Grande, he was a Christian when he was locked up, but as soon as he came out, all of a sudden he was rapping that gangster talk and in videos with guns and stuff like that. And it's like what happened? I thought you were a Christian, bro. If he would have came out and did his family thing, nobody would have told him anything, right? But for him to now all of a sudden like this is like kind of like, okay, so it was just used as an excuse then. It never rains in Southern California. It rains from time to time. What does that refer to? Members of prison as legends? Have you heard the term being used before? I have never heard anybody use the term legends. Just Dubs. Dubs is the only one that I have ever heard use that term. I've never heard that term ever. People don't refer to themselves as legends or don't want to be seen as legends. That's retarded. I mean, sure, there's individuals that are egotistical, but they would probably maybe see that as degrading. Like you're kind of trying to, poke fun. And it's never a good tactic. So I don't know why it's done, to be honest with you. By referring to somebody as a legend, then you're only pitching to the audience that maybe these individuals are misunderstood and maybe um, could look into them and maybe, might see some good qualities or some stuff, shit like that. I remember when armed bank robberies were easier. Everything was easier, There was cameras, but nowadays, with so many cameras and everything being able to be tracked, it's almost nearly impossible. You can be tracked by your phone. You can be tracked by tracking devices in the money that you're not even aware of, right? The monies now have numbers on them, so even if you do spend the money, they're able to track where you spend the money at, and then they could go get the surveillance tapes there, and then literally they could just literally follow you to wherever you go, right? Like if they see you pulling out of the bank, heading north, right? Then they just grab the cameras and follow you all the way to north to wherever you turn. Then they follow those cameras down that way and literally to where you end up, because almost everywhere has cameras, right? I mean, obviously, it takes up a lot of time. People having to, go through hours and hours of surveillance stuff, right? But that's their job, so that's why it takes a while for people to get caught, but they eventually end up getting caught, right? And not only that, but then the fact that everybody talks, right, and people can't seem to keep their mouth shut. They commit a crime, yet they want to tell the whole world and expect the whole world to keep their secret. That already shows a lack of insight. Like clearly you don't understand that not everybody sees things and thinks like you. So you may not think that this is a big deal, but to people it might be a big deal. Oh yeah. Yeah, Charlie Roll did have some good music. When you call those people out, they say you're only targeting them. And they are Christian. That's not true. People that are targeted because of that is if they use faith in order to get themselves out of a situation. you know. But like, let's say individuals who did their thing, who have came out, and now all of a sudden they just, find the Lord in their life, then nobody tells them anything. Nobody tells them, hey, homie, you better come and kick it, or you better come and, you know what I mean? People just leave them alone and let them do their thing. Wes Watson might refer to himself as a legend. Oh yeah, he definitely sees himself as a legend. No, he sees himself more. He is the king of legends. Wes Watson is on a different tier in and of himself. In their own world, not in the rest of society. You're only a legend in your own mind, like they say. Jesus, that is most won't achieve, I guess. That's what does cause the legends, but seems like he's good for the lifestyle. Calling them that. I actually don't see why he does that though, because not even functioning individuals use those terms. That's why I don't understand. I don't get it. Like I said, it's really hard to understand where their standings are or like what they really believe because they're just all over the place, you know. And then maybe that's because it's a part of the YouTube thing, right? They're just kind of like pitching along to the audience. They're chameleons. They're adapting to however their audience is receiving the message. As long as you become Christian and leave the life alone, you think nobody has a moment. But if you're a Christian and a gangster, it's yeah, facts. What's crying like a little rich? Dumb became a Christian, you never went back. So that had, yeah, and you don't hear people coming on here and talking shit about him, right? Like, how many people do you really hear come on here and actually talking shit on the individual? None, because there's no reason for it. The reason you heard people critiquing Chino Grande was for that reason. He became Christian, and he came out and he acted like he was a gangster. You see the difference? Doesn't gonna think that they are legends in their own. Not even there. I think what it is that they think that they're slick and they think that they're cunning, right? Like, oh, that they have the audience at the palm of their hands, right? Um, because they get still a bunch of support, even though when they have made a countless of mistakes and clearly people have seen that their lies, right? The fact that they still have people there defending them is what grows their egos, right? It's what makes them think that they're untouchable. That no matter what they say or what comes out, um, they can nobody bring them down, type of stuff, right? And then you see more and more of the behavior come out, right? Because that confidence leads to a bunch of mistakes. And this can apply to even some of your homies, or it's hypocritical for them to gangbangers every day in church and Sundays acting like it. I don't believe that. They may believe in God and say that they're Catholic, but they only say that because their parents, that's what their parents are, right? And they feel like they have to align themselves somewhere. And people do believe in God, right? They just don't care about what they are doing, right? They're not making the connection. And yes, like you said, it is hypocritical, right? Because they truly don't believe in faith like that. They truly don't, you know, they're only saying that they're Catholics or Christian because that's how they were raised, right? But they truly don't really believe in none of that, though, right? Um, Not only that, but their emotions get the best of them, right? Like, even for example, there's individuals that are Catholics and Christians that go to church and even different religions, right? But then they participate in, like, let's say, they're compulsive gamblers. Maybe some of them have, anger issues, right? And can't control themselves. Maybe some individuals, are alcoholics. Um, but that's only because of their behaviors, though. They don't know how to control their behaviors. It's not so much that they don't believe in their faith, right? It's just that they don't know how to handle their bad behaviors, their emotions, you know? It's like they want to better themselves, but whenever they're put in these scenarios, they can't seem to, handle the situations. You know, and that could be due to trauma as well, right? That's why I say if people feel like they can't control behaviors like this, or stuff gets out of hand, that they seek counseling. Where they can be helped with their problems instead of trying to do it on your own. Because trying to do it on your own, you're just not going to be able to make it happen. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But some people have issues like that. Christian highly against. I really don't know, because it's with having a drink, as you see Jesus turns wine into, or water into wine, right? It's the fact of individuals getting intoxicated. Like in the book, it doesn't say that alcohol is a sin, right? Alcoholics becoming an alcoholic is the issue, not so much the alcohol in itself, right? But it could be too how they view the scenario, right? That they be like, nah, you know what? We should just punish anybody who has a drink in general. Maybe they think that alcohol leads to becoming an alcoholic. I really don't know. But it's more of a personal view than, they just, a lot of people have that habit where they tend to say that it says it in the Bible when it really doesn't. Charlie Clerk was one of those. Candace Owens is another one who tends to do that a lot. They say that stuff is in the Bible when it really isn't. I'm not gonna lie, the right is full of a lot of individuals who don't really like to educate themselves on what they're actually preaching. Not to say that there isn't educated individuals, right? But it seems to be that a lot of those individuals, you know, don't really care about facts, and more about, they care about their traditions, and people living like how they live because they feel like they're living life the right way. I don't know. It's actually quite interesting. There are some people, and I mean civilians and YouTubers, who say Enrique is a legend not because of his past status, but because of how he lived his life and came out after doing more than 30 years. Yeah, but see, an individual shouldn't be given the status of legend just because he did a lot of time incarcerated. That doesn't make somebody a legend. Uh, you shouldn't respect people just because they made mistakes and were caught. You know, you know, respect people for how they changed their lives. Respect people for overcoming their obstacles, and for what they're doing, right? Um, like bettering themselves, or maybe even giving back to you know bettering their communities. You know what I mean? Not to say that you have to do that, right? But if an individual goes that route, I could see why people could respect that. Like, he came out and now he's giving back to the community when he didn't have to, but he chose to, without having no one to tell him. I could see why that could be commendable. But just because he did time and he came out, that's not. There's people that go to prison all the time and come out, right? And it's not something, like I said, should be respected. People commit a bunch of crimes on a day to day, right? And some don't even get caught, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Is it good for you? Most religious people are not. Well, alcohol's not good for you if you abuse it. But like I said, anything you abuse, it eventually becomes bad for you. Including money, right? Mentally, it could fuck with your mental, right? If you become obsessed with money, right? You could start, throwing relationships, uh, morals down the drain, right? You could be consumed by the greed, right? So, like I said, anything that you abuse eventually becomes bad, you know. So I don't think alcohol in itself is a bad thing, but I mean if you abuse it, right? Like even like let's say the medicine that's prescribed to you by your doctor, right? Um, they prescribe you this medicine to help you, with your to recover, right? But then if you start abusing that medicine, then obviously it starts to become bad for you, right? Because remember, methamphetamines and even like heroin, for example, was stuff that governments and the medical field used to treat their patients, right? Until they realized that it was highly addicting, right? So then that's when they started to, that's the reason why they, stopped doing that. But before, doctors used to prescribe, heroin to people. Oh, so that's a fun fact. So we're getting a crocodile god shapeshifter. Excuse me. What about people who? Why are people so evil? Is the devil that's making people act? Yeah, no, people are just they give into their bad habits. It's divided into yeah, the Old Testament and the New Testament. A lot of stuff, I guess. Shit, the Old Testaments are now not in the yeah, but that's what I mean though. Like how it's crazy how the scripture has changed at the convenience. And the fact that there's so many scriptures in general, right? Everyone proclaims to have the right scripture, and everybody's sources are the same. In every religion, there was always somebody who was given this information to, and everybody proclaims to have the right information and follow the right, creator. Like I was talking about how there was I seen a video where there was individuals, how they're diplomats, right? But they had different religious beliefs, right? And how heated that debate got. Well, it wasn't even a debate no more. That shit turned into a full blown argument that started to get kind of physical and violent towards the end. And it's like, what the hell? It was a trip though. Jesus. Sinners, I feel like there's a master who becomes. Hey, likewise, terps. Sex offenders, child abuse, and in prison too. Yeah, and and that's even more crazy. That's how fucked up the law is, right? Because you see individuals for getting caught with like a 40 of like meth, they'll get like 20 years. But a person who was caught, molesting a 5-year old or shit like that, they only get like 6 years in probation. Like, how does that even make sense? Shit, people who have religion status don't cause it be respected if they are still. Well, see, that's the thing, though. Respected to who? In whose eyes, though? You get what I mean? That's how the structure is. So that's why individuals, who choose to live that life, they're gonna do what they do, right? But to say, like, let's say, regular folks, why should they respect anything like that? You know what I mean? It clearly goes against everything in which um, in your morals, right? But just because you may not, like how somebody lives their life, that doesn't also mean that you have to come and insult the individuals and create something out of nothing, right? Because then now you're going to put yourself in a situation that you really didn't even need to put yourself into, right? And you're bringing yourself problems. Like, people don't have to respect them, but they don't have to disrespect them either, right? Let's just let them be. What are your thoughts on the narrative pushing by gang lights on the internet that every Southsider Aspires to become a legend one day. I think that's the narrative that they wanted to pitch, or that they try to pitch, right? Because that now it kind of is like telling the families that to interfere and to do something, because they're going to inspire to do this. It was more of propaganda than actual facts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my lunch break is over. We gotta get back to it. It was good chopping it up with you guys, and we out.